guys, welcome to another episode of My Counselor Live. So happy to be here with you guys today. I'm Tori, and today I'm joined by Lacey Wallace, one of our amazing counselors on the team. Lacey, you have been on the show before, but I would love for you to give the viewers just a little bit of a summary about you. Who are you? What do you do at MCO if they have not seen you before?
Yeah. Thank you, Tori. My name is Lacey Wallace. I am a therapist here at MyCounselor.Online. I have been here for about a little over 4 years. I absolutely love my job. I love my team. And I think primarily I do a lot of work with individuals and couples around relational issues. The majority of my new clients coming in are sex therapy clients. And so that's kind of where I've spent the most of my time the last couple of years, is working with couples or individuals that are just really struggling in the sexual part of their marriage. And so, yeah, so
Yeah, absolutely. And such an important job too, especially in this field of Christian
Mhm.
therapy and counseling. I think it's so important to have people who are skilled and trained to be able to talk through those things
Yeah.
from that biblical perspective. So super excited to talk with you today, and that kind of bleeds into what we're going to kind of chat through first today, which is an article that you wrote called What to Expect When Starting Sex Therapy at My Counselor Online. I love that you wrote this because I think maybe a big thing for people is not knowing what to expect. And so then they just don't do it if they need it. And so I'm excited to talk about that. Just kind of start with what inspired you to write this article?
Mhm. So many clients that I have that first session with will say, we've been struggling with this in our marriage for a decade, or, for several years, and just not known where to turn, especially within the faith world, like who to talk to about this. And I think it's just this fear of whether what they're experiencing is worthy of seeking therapy. Can anybody understand what it is that they're going through or can help them? Just getting really busy with life and kind of like putting that on the back burner. And I've just heard so many stories of, man, I wish I would have done this sooner. I wish, like, after we've gotten into the work and they've really eased in, it's like, oh, why didn't we do this sooner? And I thought, well, part of that is because I think people they don't have any idea of, what to expect whenever they're experiencing sexual struggles within their marriage, and what sex therapy is going to look like. Is it going to be weird? Is it going to be weird or uncomfortable? Or who in the world is a sex therapist? And why do they do that job? And so it's like, just, can we trust? Can we trust? And so the article is just really to help those people that might be kind of teetering on the fence and just need a little bit of information before they would make the call to seek the
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, so good. I mean, you just kind of answered this question, but my next question was going to kind of be, who's this article written for? But I guess it is written for those people who are just sort of teetering and trying to figure out if this is for them. So super great. I would love to know how sex therapy at MCO is different than just your general sex therapy that you would choose to go to. How is it
Yeah.
different?
Yeah. Well, it is fully integrated with faith. So what we know to be true is God is the author and designer of us as humans, and we are not disconnected as humans from the sexual part of us. And so he didn't just design us and is indifferent to the sexual part of who we are. He designed it. He created it. He desires for it to be a blessing to us, a satisfying part of our life, and not just in the marriage, but individually. And so um, that is the first thing, is just to be able to integrate that. That is what's different. That we don't leave out God and his design for sex. Second, I think there are certain things that I'll notice that my clients that have been in the church, that have struggled in and around just like the teaching or the silence of, and a Christian or a secular sex therapist might not be able to fully grasp and understand what that struggle has looked like and how to be able to help to where we can, because, that's something that I've experienced and have gone through. And so my experience can definitely help a person that's seeking that additional Christian component of sex therapy.
I
And we allow them
great
to
point.
grapple with things, right? We allow them the space to be able to grapple with things that might not be for them. That a secular sex therapist, they might not really truly understand the conviction that they might have around certain things sexually.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. And I think the point that you mentioned about, if you've grown up or if, you've been an adult in that space in the church, and in that kind of culture that maybe hides away from talking about it, that can affect your whole perspective of it.
Mhm.
And so you need someone who understands that, who has been in that space or knows of that space, to kind of process that with you, because that's really, really difficult. Um,
Yeah. And it
so
is an ease in, and it is an ease in for my clients to be able to understand that it is okay to talk about it, that it
mm,
is okay to express what it is that they're feeling and what they're experiencing, that there's isn't anything wrong with that. And so it's this moment with my clients that I watch them take a deep breath, and it's like, enjoy, just like soak in this safe place to
mm.
be able to share all of the things that they're experiencing without fear of it being wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That is really, really good. So how do you know if you need a sex therapist? Is there kind of like a threshold you cross and you're like, we need sex therapy? How do you know? Does everyone need it? What are your thoughts on that?
Mhm. Well, I personally think that we all need a little bit of guidance as far as that part of our marriage, because, kind of what we hear, and especially what we hear within the church, is sex before marriage, it's bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's bad. It's bad. But then what you hear about sex after marriage is it's good. And that's it. Like, all you hear is it's good. After marriage
Right.
is
And it's
good.
so hard to I even think about when I first got married. So I've been married, a little over a year and a half now. But I do think of, when we were dating and it was like sex, sex, no, 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 no. And then it was like, oh, yes, like go crazy, do it. And then it's like, it's so hard. Your brain has the hardest time, like disconnecting those. And
Mhm.
it's very difficult. And thankfully, we didn't have too much trouble kind of jumping into that part of our lives. But I have friends who really, really struggled to just adjust to that and really just like change their entire mindset by
Mhm.
themselves
Mhm.
around sex.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And then, add to that the fact that there hasn't been a lot of preparation. So it's like, is sex just something that comes naturally and it's just easy and you just know what to do with your body and with your spouse's body? Generally, no. Like, there, we need some sort of, understanding or education and
Right,
around that. And
right.
so, like, I think there needs to be some, like, I love premarital work. I love being able to walk couples through some extensive sex therapy and premarital work to number one, understand, is there something from your history that might be a barrier in your marriage that you don't understand prior to coming in? We can kind of process that and talk about it before you hit that wall within your marriage. But then also just the education around understanding your body, understanding your spouse's body, understanding that it's good to talk about it, it's okay to talk about it, kind of, rip the band-aid off beforehand to where you can start really good vulnerable conversations about sex. I was like 10 years into my marriage before I didn't blush talking about sex with my husband, right? That it's just like something that sometimes we will engage in, but we won't talk about. And so, really, just being able to be so comfortable talking about this really important part of our marriage. And so, I think everybody needs a little bit of sex therapy. However, I think that if you are experiencing something, whether you've been married 2 weeks or 20 years, if you're experiencing something that there's some concern with, or there's some dissatisfaction with, or there's just, or you're really conflicting about it, that, you know it's worthy of taking a look at. It's worthy of reaching out and figuring it out. because it is a really precious, important part of marriage. And, figuring out, because I have some couples that have just like minimized it so much that it's just this problem, but we just don't think about it. But
Mhm.
they don't really understand the consequences that that's having in the meantime. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. No, that's great. This is kind of a hypothetical, but not really, because I feel like we get a lot of questions kind of with this exact situation. But say that one spouse kind of sees that need for sex therapy and sees that that's an issue for them and for the relationship, and the other doesn't.
mhm.
What steps can you take with that in order to kind of both receive that therapy?
Yeah, I do have a lot of individuals that come in that would strongly desire for their spouse to be there with them in sex therapy. And so, um, we'll begin their work individually, and that's such an option to be able to start that individually. And I've had so many spouses that, once their spouse engaged and they saw that it wasn't weird or wasn't going to be accusing or finger pointing, that I'm not weird, and somebody that that can really be helpful, then I've had so many couples to where their spouses joined them just after a few sessions, and we've been able to do that work together. But it is okay to come in individually, even if you have the sexual concerns about your marriage. There's some grief to that if your spouse isn't willing to come with you, and we can process through all of that. But I would just encourage, anybody that is experiencing any kind of difficulty in this area, whether together or individually, to reach out. We can help.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's great, great advice. Because that's a hard situation to be in.
Yeah.
It's hard, it's very lonely.
Yeah.
That is just so hard to be in. And
Because
so,
nobody talks about it, right?
right, right.
So
And
it's
it feels like this thing, this like barrier, like you can't, which to a point, like, you don't want to go around like airing out
sure.
your whole life to everyone. But at the same time, I do think there's maybe this culture of like, you don't talk about
Yeah.
sexual difficulties or anything going on in your marriage with anyone else. And so
Yeah.
that's a very like lonely space to be in, especially when your spouse doesn't want to talk about it either.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that there's been all kinds of books written about it, that there's actual jobs centered around helping people around sexual struggles, but for some reason when we're in the midst of it, we do feel very alone, like we're the only one struggling, that we don't really know where to turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people do kind of turn toward MCO for their sex therapy,
Mhm.
you talk about the first 4 sessions, kind of what to expect in each session.
Mhm.
Will you just expand on that for the people who are tuning in today?
Yeah. Yeah, so that first session, I'm just going to really normalize that this is a really tender, precious issue that we're talking about. And of course, they're probably nervous. Some couples I have aren't nervous, they're just crazy excited, to be there. But so I have kind of on the spectrum of either or, someone right in the middle. But I do have, a strong, amount of people that are just really nervous. And I think we spend a lot of time, just really normalizing that, and just, that I allow them to get to know me a little bit, because I think that's really important, because the relationship that we forge, especially around this tender part of their marriage, is really important. And so, and then we'll get into kind of what their experiences have looked like, what they're bumping up against, what they're struggling, and, you know, just really, talk through. We've got a plan. And so we'll kind of talk through some reading that I would like them to do. We'll kind of talk about the assessments that I'm going to send them. So there's 4 pretty lengthy assessments that I send out after that first session, that, then I'll let them know that the next 2 sessions I'll want to meet with, the couple individually. And it's not at all to like hide or, keep something from your spouse, but sometimes we just need to talk without fear of like hurting feelings, or we just really need to have a space. And that just helps me really to get to know the spouses individually. And so I really cherish that time to where I can talk with husband and talk with wife individually, um, and just to get to know what their experience around sexuality through their lifespan up until this point have looked like. And then after we have our individual sessions, so sessions 2 and 3, we'll come back together for that fourth session and just kind of process through what it has been like. Because these are sometimes things that we've kind of shoved aside or pushed under the rug. And so now we're like putting them right in front of us, right? And so what has that been like for you? What conversations maybe have, manifested through, just the early stages of them seeking help, and then kind of talk through what the retraining process is going to look like, and answer any questions that they might have. But then from then on, then we get started in the real work that we'll do together.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So, so good. What encouragement would you give, Lacey, to someone tuning in who maybe is just kind of hit with this, like, oh, that's what I need. Like, I need that. My husband and I need that. My wife and I need that. What encouragement do you want to give to those people who are tuning in right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say, like, if you're hearing me, if you've read my article, just recognize that the first 4 sessions are, if you don't commit to anything else, commit to the first 4 sessions. And then you can kind of make your mind up after those first 4 sessions if this is for you. But just to kind of make that first step, if you want something different than what you currently have, we can help. We can help with that. And I have a lot of couples that don't have a lot of hope that things can be different. Maybe it's because um, they don't have a lot of hope in themselves to change, or they don't have a lot of hope in their spouse to change. Um, and so, I always let them know that I've got plenty of hope. I've experienced so much redemption and restoration with the couples that I've worked with over the years. It's like, I've got plenty of hope. I can lend some to you for a little bit. Just sit down with us. Let us hear your story. Let us, really be an encouragement to you. And then I think that they'll feel safe enough to get started.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lacey, thank you for that. And thank you for writing just such a really well thought out article with just really great intentions of making people feel safe and making
Mhm.
people feel prepared to be able to do a really hard thing.
Mhm.
So I just am thankful that you had the inspiration to write an article like this, because I think that it's going to help a lot of people kind of ease their way into
Sure.
sex therapy and into counseling in general and things that they need. So I just so appreciate that. And with that, we're going to kind of jump into our next segment of the episode, which is our trending topic, what people are talking about, Googling, researching. And I think this is a really cool one that we get to talk about because the trending topic is telehealth, which you can expand on in a second. But I know that MCO kind of is a part of that. And, like what we do here and meeting over Zoom and things like that is kind of a part of that. So I'm excited to talk about that. So let's start by just broad telehealth. What is it?
Yeah. So then, what people would consider the norm would be you would come into my office and sit on my couch. And so telehealth is taking that to where that doesn't necessarily have to be what happens in order for you to receive care. And so whether that be, I know some people might do sessions over the phone, we do sessions over Zoom. And so telehealth is you not necessarily coming in physically to my office, but us meeting together online.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the question that a lot of people have around telehealth is it actually helpful? Is it actually beneficial? Do you have to be in an office for you to be affected by the different things that you're doing over Zoom or whatever it might be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have a lot of my first time clients that are meeting for the very first time with a therapist online be concerned about that. And, it is a question that I don't minimize at all. Of course that's a concern, right? Because this isn't something that you've ever experienced, and you don't know what that will feel like. And so I have had the privilege of being able to do telehealth since 2017. So before the pandemic hit, before this was really something that was a booming, trending topic, right? We've been doing this kind of work, for the past several years. And I have some clients that I've worked with for years and we've never sat in the same room. I have some clients that, that it feels really good and safe for them to stay in their home and they prefer that. And we can build a really strong connecting relationship online. I have done it. I've experienced it. I cry with my clients. I laugh together. We are able to get to the heart of their issue through telehealth. So it is something that I've experienced. I love. I love the fact that it allows me to be where I am and you to be where you are, wherever in the world, and us to connect and work together.
Yeah, I think also just the benefit of being able to have your safe place.
Mm,
For me, if I were coming into counseling with you, for me to be able to sit in like a safe place, in my home or wherever that is for me, I think is really beautiful as well.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we take for granted sometimes that being in person is what's best for everybody.
Mhm.
Sometimes being in person is overwhelming or really intimidating. And so this does allow for that as well, for you to feel safe where you receive therapy,
Yeah,
to kind
yeah.
of take that stress out of it. Mhm.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think that that is just so, so cool. I love that we live in an age where we can do that, um,
Mhm.
that I think even, however many years ago, like before, technology and all of these things, you had to, walk or, take a wagon or a horse or something to like be able to seek help. And that it's just like so easily accessible now. And
Yeah.
of course we
Yeah.
have, issues that come about with technology and all of these different things, but it also has just like so made that so much better, especially through the pandemic. I couldn't imagine going through this past year and not being able to seek counseling and not being able
Sure.
to talk to people over Zoom, over FaceTime, whatever it is.
Yeah. And the thing of it is the work that we do is pretty unique. There's not a ton of Christian sex therapists or even Christian therapists out there. And so we take for granted that, that there's just a short drive or a short commute to being able to receive the kind of help that we offer at My Counselor Online. And so I think that that is something that's really awesome too, that it doesn't have to be within driving distance for you to receive the kind of help that you desire, not the kind of help that you just have to engage in because it's where you're located, right? That
Right.
you're not just, yeah.
Yeah, and I even think, of course, everyone can benefit from telehealth and from doing counseling over Zoom and things like that. But I even think of, people with full-time jobs, maybe moms, just people who are, really busy, being
Yep.
able to still do this and not say no because they don't have time to commute. It's
Yeah.
like it kind of releases you of some excuses to seek
Mhm.
that health and that better help for yourself.
Yeah, I do a lot of therapy with moms, like strategically plan to where baby's napping, or
Mhm.
I do a lot of therapy with couples in the evenings after they've put kids down. And so they don't have to find a babysitter. They don't, there's so many things that they don't have to do in order to engage in good therapy.
No, absolutely. And I think that's something pretty unique with MCO as well. Of course, there are other companies that do that. But for MCO to be a Christian therapy and Christian counseling, for them to offer that and to be able to almost like platform it like it's advertised as being online, even though they do have some offices, like it is advertised as being online. And I think that that makes people feel so much more comfortable and even excited to pursue that.
Mhm. Yeah, we have clients that live, you know, in the same city in which their therapist is in, and they absolutely could. And I have some that kind of are hybrid. So sometimes they'll come in and sometimes they'll join my online, or sometimes they live in the same city as I do and they still choose to join me online, which I love their ability to have that option.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So good. Amazing. Well, thank you for kind of sharing your experience with that. And I know that
Yeah.
you've, been able to talk to a lot of people who are doing counseling that way as well. So super great, especially during this time through the pandemic, as we're still kind of navigating what things look like now. I think that that is just so important to be able to have that option, especially around our mental health, emotional health,
Mm.
counseling, our marriages, relationships, all of that. I think it's just so, so important, more now than ever to be able to have that accessible. So, with that, we're going to kind of jump into our last segment of My Counselor Live, which is our Q&A portion. My favorite portion. This is when you guys, the viewers, the listeners, get to be a part of the show. These are your questions that you're sending in over Facebook, over Instagram, YouTube, even just at MyCounselor.Online/ask. These are your questions. So we're going to kind of jump in to that. And I am going to jump in with this first question, which is, my husband and I have been through a lot emotionally, and we've not been intimate in just under 7 years. My question is, where do we start?
Mhm. Yeah. And so I think that just recognizing that this is such a tender, precious part of their marriage that um, hasn't kind of been non-existent or non-active for several years, that we really start with some help, right? To reach out to, find somebody that they can trust to help walk them through this, right? It's like, um, being able to recognize that you do not have to navigate this by yourself, that there are people that are equipped and have a strong desire to seek to help this couple reach their goals. And so I think first and foremost, like my heart would be, come find one of us, come find one of us to where we can help you um, navigate through this as painless as possible. And we'll start really slow, um, start back with just really creating and connecting intimacy. And yeah, so it will be a slow is fast process. So
Mhm.
the slower sometimes that we go, the quicker we're able to reach the goals that we want. And so to just really figure out what this couple wants, what this couple sees as success and intimacy, and really be able to help them.
Yeah, yeah, so good. Okay, well, let's jump into this next question, which is a little bit similar, but not really. This person said, what do you do when your wife doesn't want sex? Um, it's been this way now for 15 years, and it's having a huge impact on my emotional well being. So, this is kind of, I guess, from a husband's perspective this time, and a little bit different. It seems that she doesn't want to be intimate at all. So, what's your response to this question?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would first just normalize his pain in this, that it has been something that's been incredibly difficult for him, not to dismiss his wife and what she's felt in this too, but just to acknowledge that, that it has been a struggle point and what he's realizing that it is taking an impact on how he feels about himself, how he feels within himself, and that it is definitely something that he's desiring to address. I think that we see desire discrepancies a lot, and the fact of the matter is, I think people assume that the desire discrepancy is always the wife with the lower sex drive, the husband with the higher, but really it's pretty equal from what I see coming into my office that, um, so it can be either or the wife or the husband to have the lower sex drive, but in this case, I would just provide a really soft spot to kind of understand both of them and what they're going through and what they're experiencing, and have a place for this wife to actually discover that if there's not a desire for sex, let's figure out why, because how God designed her was to enjoy sex, for that to be something that is fulfilling and rewarding and enjoyable, not just for her husband or for her marriage, but for her too. And so to be able to kind of figure out what that looks like so that it can be a really rewarding part of her life, and then also enhance marriage and be helpful with husband too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Continuing on with this theme of kind of sex therapy in our Q&A, this person said, is an orgasm required in every sexual experience with my husband in order to fulfill God's purpose for sex? Is it okay to have sex without orgasm?
Absolutely. It absolutely is. I don't think it's okay to have sex without orgasm all the time. I think that sometimes wives might be into that like caretaking mode and self-sacrificing mode and minimize their need in order for sexual pleasure and sexual release. And so I think that it is something that needs to be addressed if that's not ever happening or hasn't ever happened. We want to be able to help figure that out. But there are some times to where, for whatever reason, wife might not be able to reach orgasm. There might be time constraints. I have no idea what that circumstance might be, but it doesn't mean that wife can't feel really satisfied and connected, and um, that sexual experience can be pleasurable. And I have a lot of husbands that they have a strong desire for their wife to orgasm. So that's something that, that they, it's not just about, how often they can have sex, and it doesn't matter to them if their wife orgasms or not. I have a lot of husbands that, that they are good with connecting with their wife, sometimes when she doesn't, but then strongly desire for her to feel sexual pleasure too. And so I think a really good balance of, no, it is not wrong. You can engage and have a really satisfying sexual experience with your husband and not orgasm. So it isn't wrong. But on the flip side of that, for it to be um, not the norm.
Right, right. Kind of for it to be like one-sided, where one partner
Mhm,
is enjoying and the other is not always, you know?
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And that's not saying that a wife can't enjoy sex without orgasm, because you
Right.
absolutely can. Absolutely can. And there's going to be times like, within the span life of aging and things that happen to our bodies, that at some point in time it might be reversed to where husband might be engaged in sex and have to be okay with not necessarily having an orgasm. And so, like, to be able to navigate that throughout the lifespan. And this is something too that whenever a couple seek sex therapy, what they are learning to be able to do is help redefine what sex is and what intimacy is. And so some couples, sex is defined by penis and vagina only, right? And so if that can't happen, then sex isn't fulfilling or rewarding. Well, throughout the lifespan, there's going to be lots of times to where that might not be possible. So being able to figure out what that looks like, so we can have really good intimate connecting experiences, even in times that we have to navigate through physical things that are going on with our bodies.
Yeah, for sure. That's so good. So good. So, you guys, thank you for tuning in today. Maybe, Lacey has said some things that struck a chord with you that you felt, maybe you want to pursue some sex therapy, some counseling. Lacey's available for that. We have so many amazing counselors on our team, people who are trained in Christian sex therapy. And if that is something that you really feel like would be beneficial for you, for your marriage, definitely reach out. We would love to connect you guys. But thank you, Lacey, for just taking up some of your time to talk with us and share your heart with our listeners today.
Yeah. Thanks, Tori. It's really been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, we'll see you next week for another episode.